Hi everyone, this is Freddie with Superbike Unlimited, and we've got another update for you on our 2020 BMW S1000RR Ultimate Superbike project. And what we have today is our clamp set. We've been waiting on this. This has actually been one of the things that's been kind of stalling some of the chassis progress on the bike. And it's been a lot of work to get these because they're a full custom set. So we're going to get right to it. These are by Evol technology, and what we have here in this bag looks like steering stops and a complete range of inserts, which will be offset adjustment, which is what controls trail. And then get right to the good stuff here. This is going to be our clip-on set again, very specific to this application because we're running a special Superbike fork that has a 54.5 millimeter upper clamp diameter, so not a lot of clip-ons that fit that. So lower clamp, upper clamp. That's either an axle or a steering stem. And there's the steering stem, so the other one's the axle. Looks like that's everything. We're making a mess here. Okay, so we'll get right in this. So front axle, a little dirty, but looks like a pretty nice piece. This should allow us to simplify our fork install, which is always a bit of a task. Anytime, for those of you who don't understand, when you're using one of these Superbike forks, which we'll just walk you over here and show you these. When you're using a set of these Superbike forks, such as these are really anything but a bolt-on fork. This fork is essentially a universal product. And what that means is that you're going to need fender mounts, you're going to need a custom axle, you're going to need triple clamps as we have here that are going to allow you to fit the forks to the motorcycle, and then several other components like the stuff that holds any wheel speed sensors or really anything that would be specific to your motorcycle. You're going to have made, or you're going to have to fabricate yourself. So that's we often try to, if we can, we'll get as much of this stuff as possible from suppliers, and this axle should save us a lot of time. So all right, so next we'll just open up all this stuff, and I'll be right back after we've gotten everything opened and laid out. Okay, so we've got everything out of its packaging and assembled, and we're just going to go over a couple of things to kind of help you understand these clamps, and really a few things that we really like about these, and really what makes them special to us. So a couple of things. What's really nice about Evol, there's a handful of triple clamp manufacturers that we really like out there, specific, and some work better for certain applications than others. But one great thing about Evol technology is that the person that makes these, the guy that engineers and designs all these, Steve Coral, really goes above and beyond to make adjustments specific to the application. So something that's great about these, and when I say that, I mean a lot of triple clamps are kind of universal in some ways, as in a set that's for the R1 or for the BMW or for the Kawasaki, they're all going to have very similar design aesthetics and that kind of thing, and that's fine. But what's nice about these and most of the stuff that you get from Evol is it's really kind of engineered around the motorcycle and specific needs that may arise from that. So just a couple of things that stand out right away on this one is, one, the nominal offset on this, or the zero offset, if you're using a set of inserts that say zero, is 29.5 millimeters, which is what the standard triple clamp is. This is nice just because mentally it kind of helps you keep track of things, and it's a simple way to keep up with it versus having to keep up with many other triple clamps. Zero is 25 or 30 or 28 or whatever, and it's like that across all of the models. Another thing is that these have a pretty aggressive gull wing design, which means that the point that clamps the fork is actually higher than the center point here. And the reason for that is just so that the clip-ons can actually be mounted in the correct position, or as the bike was designed to have them mounted. And of course, this does require using a long fork, which we're using on this case. It's going to be a 770 millimeter fork. The version for the standard fork is not going to have quite this gull wing, but it's just a nice detail. So anyway, on to the other features of this clamp set. The right now, again, there's a 0 offset, and essentially what you can do, we have 1 through 5, and as you can see, some of these have an actual numeral marked into them. You know, there's a 1, and then other just have kind of like a scribe, and since there's 5 lines, we know that's a 5mm offset. So essentially those can be run forward or backward. So you can be +5 or -5. And offset, for those of you who don't know, is literally just the difference between the center of where the fork mounts to the center of the steering stem. That's your offset. So we can use these to then adjust that value, and that has a direct impact on our trail, which affects how the bike turns in and how it finishes corners and overall stability and steering characteristics. And the great thing is you can do this kind of thing. Obviously, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, I want my bike to turn better, so I lowered the front 10mm or whatever. So that may have that effect, but it's going to, you know, inevitably impact other things, because now that you've lowered the bike, you've kind of shifted the way the weight balance is on the motorcycle. So with this, you can change things like trail without having to raise or lower the motorcycle. So you can have like a motorcycle that you really like the balance on. You just want it to turn in a little bit better, or you just want it to flick a little easier, or you need it to be more stable. We can achieve that by changing offset. So anyway, we also have this axle here. You know, not really much to go over with this just yet until we mock everything up. And again, it's kind of dirty. We'll wipe this down and get some proper footage of it on the motorcycle later. It's got a lot of dust from the packaging, but essentially this is just going to allow us to mount up everything, hopefully with relative ease. And it's going to just adapt to the inner diameter of the fork clamp, or the axle clamp that's in those Superbike forks. And so next we're going to start mocking everything up. We should be able to be back at you pretty soon with some footage of all of this installed and some forks. So we'll see you in a second. All right, so Tex is now installing this clamp set, and one thing that's nice about these is that Steve actually presses on the lower race and seal, which you could see in the intro of this video. And then we retain this upper, what's that called, Tex?
It's just a dust plate to keep dust out of the bearing.
Nice. That's retained with this kit. Next, we mock up some forks. All right, so we've got these clamps mounted up, and now Tex is going to start installing our Superbike forks. And from there, we're just going to mock everything up and kind of get an idea of, Steve's provided us with some wheel spacers to get everything mounted up. And we're just going to see how close those are and what adjustments we need to make to get the wheels centered. This is going to be our captive nut, and that serves two purposes. It does serve as a nut for the axle, but it's also going to serve as sort of a sleeve to get the correct fit inside this fork bottom here. And of course, here we have our OZ wheel that we're using. We have a set of discs just mocked up, obviously, with a couple of bolts to hold them in place. And these are the wheel spacers that were provided by Evol. We don't expect these to work right away. Again, these are just going to be basis from which we start and take some measurements. And then we've got the calipers here, which we're going to mount those up, and that'll help us determine what we need to do to center everything. And this axle and nut are a reverse thread setup, so it's worthy of note. pretty close. As you can see, there's a small gap here, and this is what we're going to have to adjust. I don't know if you can make that out on the camera, but there's a small, about a 2 millimeter gap right there. Yeah, you can kind of hear it move. That's what we're going to have to correct. So next we'll mount up the calipers with the correct spacers, and that'll help us determine if it's just an equal adjustment that we need to make on each spacer or what.